Greetings, pilgrims, and welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage, and today we are going to be making some sci-fi interfaces. So this is from a user request to see what could be done inside of Substance Designer to create some sci-fi shapes and different interface type items and different icons. Now, all of this you could do in Photoshop or in almost any other program, but it was an interesting challenge to see what I could come up with inside of Substance. And of course, as always, this is 100% procedural, so you could change anything and everything, drop a different color in, use a different shape. So we got a lot to cover. So I'm going to start at the top and kind of work our way down, and we're going to ignore all of this over here. This is just to do this whole conglomeration thing here so we can see the results. Okay, so first up we're going to talk about what is mostly our background here, but this is a hologram material that I've been kind of working on in the background. I have an upcoming thing to show you, and I just put this with all this because it seemed to be appropriate. So let's zoom in a bit and take a look at this. In the background here, it's quite detailed. There we are. So you can see the main elements are here. We have a background color. We have two actual grids that are overlaid. There is a thinner grid and then a thicker grid. And we have this hexagon pattern in the background. And we have large crosses at the intersections, and we have small crosses in here. So all of this is handled up in here. So let's take a look. So to start with, we have our base color, and then up here we're going to throw it into a tile generator. And then using the blend here, we're going to be using this cropping area, and the cropping area allows us to tailor down, and it happened to be 0.35, 0.65 to get a cross in the center. Throw that back into a tile generator to now take that small cross and propagate it outwards. Now, using a color to mask and then inverting on the bottom here for our mask, I'm going to select that and get down to just my crosses. And now color to mask again, I'm going to get a mask that is just the crosses now with the boxed sections cut out. And then here's the color that you desire for your central crosses here to be blended over top of our base color. So now let's go to our base color. The base color here is a tile generator, and then we throw that into here, and we're using an inverted grayscale of that as our mask. And then this is the color of the grid lines themselves, these lines here. So then just blending that on top, and we pump that into here and put the crosses on top. So now let's talk about the thin grid. Let's talk about the small crosses first. So the small crosses, very much the same procedure, even borrowing from up here. Let's reuse as much as we can. So we'll borrow from up there, come down here, same procedure over here. We're cropping, but this time we're making it much smaller. There he is. And then a tile generator and a color to mask. And this creates really small little crosses, perfect for us. So I'm going to invert that and then bring it up here. And using this as our color, blend those on top. And they end up looking quite nice. There they are. And we're going to blend that together. Now, this area here is just the combining area, but we also use another grid, and it's just a slightly different grid here to get those outer edges. So we get an inner channel and then these outer edges for the main grid lines. Okay, so with that complete, everything's all combined and ready to go. We're going to push it out, and just before the end over here, there is one thing I wanted to show you. It is up here, right here. So this is where we combine our grid with this honeycomb pattern in the background, and that's using this node, which I'm going to butcher the name, but alveols. This guy has a really neat section that if you say gradient filled cells true, it will fill them in with white, and then I can tile, and I actually put a very small interstice width here, and by combining those you get this really nice effect in the background, just blending that on top, using itself as the mask, which is kind of cool. And so I get the inverse, I get these cut out and I get the lines I want. So there we go. So that's how the grid actually works. So that's our holographic grid in the background. So working our way down, we're going to talk about the holographic map. If you look at our big example sheet here, that's this here. So to keep it 100% procedural, I did not use what's typically done is an image of the the world, and then each continent here, or each landmass becomes this kind of boxed grid of lines here that we're going to use to determine the different land masses and different territories. So what I did was something a little different. I made up this cool island and broke it into different zones. So here's how that works. Zooming in on the holographic map here, we're going to be using clouds, clouds 2, clouds 3, and a clouds 2 with different settings, throwing it through a histogram scan, and then by changing the position and putting the contrast all the way up, you get these really neat land masses. And then this is a clever combination of blending different sections. Here I used a lot of this cropping. So I would take something like this original here, but by cropping all the way over to this line and then cropping all the way up to here, you see I was able to isolate this corner. And this reminds me sort of like Hawaii. You know, we have a big island and a smaller little chain of islands. And then so doing that to eliminate all the clutter and taking some of the land masses that I really want, and then doing some transforms here to rotate them, scale them, put them into position, blending them together. And then over here I used a tile generator. You can see here just to get a grid of little cubes. And then by blending all those with the mask of our shapes here, we now have our continents. And then this is a series of colors. So choosing a different color for each landmass and then using some masking here. So you take the landmass that you want, the color, and then you have your appropriate mask of whichever island or section of islands you chose. Blending those all together, and then here at the end what I did was I took our final blend and pushed it into a blend all by itself, and then went all the way back to our original shape here as the mask. So what that does for us is now you can see in the background here, it cuts everything out. So I just have the colors of the zones that I want. And then I did make a solid black here and translate it because everything else looks really nice against the holographic material. However, this doesn't, and it becomes a little muddied, and most of the examples I found, this was on a black background. So this black area in the back here is just for that background to allow you to see this effect better. And that's what this is right here. And then that just goes off and gets added in. Okay, so let's talk about some of our readouts. So our readouts are over here. We've got a radar and we've got this bar graph. All right, let me get those so you can see. There you go. So first readout is the bar graph. And this is accomplished using the waveform and then using the blend again and bringing the bottom up to exactly 0.5. It cuts it off at the halfway mark vertically. And now here I blend that with a tile generator. And this tile generator, I just used really the X and set the Y to 1. That allows me to get these horizontal bars. Vertical bars. Then I wanted to add a little bit of fanciness to them. They just seem kind of plain. So using a gradient linear with a tiling of 2, and then I transformed this. And the reason I did the tiling of 2 is this is 2 whole sections, but you can see it's offset. So I used the transform to kind of reset the offset, so to speak, so that one begins here and it goes to exactly that middle mark. And by blending those together, you see now I get a little bit of this gradient. And I use the subtract for this to get that gradient. You can also use multiply or other things. Now here's a variant to this, which is a mirrored effect. So by, of course, taking a copy of this and rotating it upside down, and then blending this again, but I inverted it from here to make it a little darker on the bottom. And by putting those back together, you do get this nice mirroring effect. And what's really neat is if you take the original waveform, I believe, and if you, let me see if I can do this without crashing anything. If you animate the noise, change the noise, we should see it propagate. Yeah, you can see it there changing a little bit. So if you, when Substance Designer 6 is compatible with Unity specifically, I don't know how to do this Unreal yet, you can animate this parameter to kind of bounce back and forth, and these lines would bounce up and down like a readout. And the really cool thing is because it's all procedural, if you do that here, it would flow right through your mirror, and the mirror should do the exact same thing. And then these here on the end, these are just nodes that are used for the compilation. Okay, let's talk about the radar. So the radar here is pretty simple. It looks really cool, and it looks much more complex than it really is. So taking a gradient linear 1 into a Cartesian to polar, I get this nice dark in the center, and it kind of fades off, and it's a perfect circle. A tile generator again, and this time the number is just the number of lines that you want across your radar. Cartesian to polar on that guy as well. And I'm going to do a blend here and use a transform 2D of our circle that you'll see later. And the circle is just to cut everything out. And what's really neat is with the tile generator, this was total accident, but it ended up being awesome. There's this little bit of a fall off at the end, the edges here, pardon me. That fall off, when you throw it through the Cartesian to polar, you get almost like this central sweep, like this is the area that the radar is currently sweeping. So again, if you were to throw this into something like Unity with the ability to animate a parameter, you can animate the transform 2D parameter and animate the rotation, and you would get this sweep going on. And what's really neat about that is you could do that back here, and as we get further here, our grid lines and our blips on the map would be unaffected. So it's a really nice, cheap effect, and you get a lot for your money. So moving along here, once we have that, I'm going to overlay that, cut that out, and overlay the Cartesian to polar on top, and you'll see the effect here. We get rid of the corners there. Now we're going to colorize it, and then here we're going to blend the Cartesian to polar, this one. We're going to blend that over top, and we start to get really nice looking radar here. Then again, going to cut out the background in case you wanted that all by itself. Using a splatter circular here of a line that comes from our utilities over here. So let's go over to our utilities. So this was a utility area, just make some crosses and some lines to use for various effects. So splatter circular to create our grid intersection lines. There they are. Put those on top. And then again, the splatter circular of the circle that we borrowed from over here. Putting that on top, we get our little radar blips. And then again here, this is to cut everything out. And then this is for the inclusion in the display here. All right, next up, this one is really cool. The compass around the edge here. So the compass is using a text node, which is a Substance Designer 6 exclusive item, so you can't do this if you don't have 6. But I put in the text here, and I put some spaces, which are these lines, and then just northwest, southeast, and it is northwest, southeast because it does go counterclockwise here across. It does not go clockwise, so I had to sort of invert it. So there you go, and then Cartesian to polar to wrap it around. I transform 2D to center the north at north, and then also to scale it up a bit. All right, so now let's talk about our power rings, and these you will see over here. Okay, so this guy, let's take a look at the finished product. This guy is really cool because it's a circle with these segments, but the segments are various shades of gray, and then simply doing a colorization of this, you get a really neat effect. So here we can see this right here. So how is this done? Tile generator. And what I did was I pushed the, where is it, down here? Pardon me, I pushed the, now I can't find it all of a sudden. There it is. Luminance, variation, contrast. Push the variation all the way up. And then I did a blend, and I used my cutoff cropping area effects here to get this thin strip. And then a Cartesian to polar to circularize it. Circularize, there we go, we made a word. And then here, transform 2D, so you can rotate it. This time I scaled it down a little bit for the inclusion in this here. And there you go. So power ring B is similar, but this is just a series of those little modules here all in a circle. So this is a gradient linear, tiled way up, a little bit of a levels in order to take out some of the gradation, and oddly enough, and I just wanted, you know, thick separating lines, a little bit of a quick fall off, and then across. And again, let's crop down a section of it, and then ring it, and then transform it. And here's a variant where what I did was I took, I think I took less lines. Let's see. I took a smaller cut, that's what it was. So this has a thicker cut. So you can see here, this is this thick, and this cut is much thinner. So it depends on what you like. They're both included in here. You can see here's the thicker one, and here's the thinner one. So just a variant of that. All right, moving on. The circular power ring, the angular one. This one I really like a lot. This guy's really cool. I almost think of it as a gear. I don't know why. It reminds me of gears. So this was done with a splatter circular of lines, and then blending that as a subtraction to a ring from our ring work a little bit later on. And those cut out give you this effect. Pretty simple. And then the transform here is for your convenience to take and include however you like. This guy is not individually shown here, but we use the same technique to create this here that we'll talk about in just a short bit. Okay, so here we are. So we're going to talk about our outer ring. And that, I believe, let's see, yeah, that is this guy here. So it's in 4 segments here. So begin at the beginning, we're creating a cutout or a mask. So using a shape, I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to do the mirror and blend trick to make a mirror of it, blend it together. Another transform to do one at the bottom, blend it together. So basically what I have here is, I'm really only concerned with taking away from this section, so I wanted the inverse of that. So now if I put a circle into that, my ring into that, and I cut out, I'm left with just this. Now I'm rotating that on the 45, and then doing my blend and transform to flip it, combine it, flip it, and combine it. Sorry, you end up with this. Now this guy was made from another ring and using those crosses that we saw earlier, cutting out from the crosses. But now that I have this, which is a thinner section and larger cutout, by subtracting that from him, you get this. And that looks pretty cool. So that's the core shape here. But now to do the variant, color variant, what I'm going to do here is get a mask, do a edge detect, and in using that edge detect, I'm going to do a blend and colorize it, blend it together. But then my mask here, I actually chose such a way that it only takes from the original shape down here. So what you get is, you notice here the color to mask is because we had this tiny little artifacting, and coloring to mask removes that. So by taking from this mask though, instead of this, I don't end up with these outer lines, which you could if you wanted to, but it was a happy accident that by masking away, you see it cuts that out entirely, and now I get my gray in the middle, and it's really cool because it's showing the grid through, and I think it looks really nice. Okay, now our circular tabbed interface, that's this guy here. So it's a circle with these little tabs that stick off. And the tabs are actually created by removing. So, circle, and the circle is blended with a transformed, usually smaller version of itself to cut out to create a ring. So with these rings here. Now this ring, we wanted to get some cuts in it. So get these cuts in it here. So I want to isolate this piece. So the cuts are created using the shape of basically a bar, splatter circular on very low settings just to get some bars sticking out. And here's another variant for the other one. And then using that as a subtractive mask, we cut out and we get this section here. Now, blending, and I believe this was a transform blend. Yes, let's take a look at this. Yeah, so what I did here was I blended, and the mask here is a transform of my circle, and I moved the circle so that it would just cover that section. And so by that being the mask, it only gives me that. Now blending and doing a subtractive nature, and I want to remove that from the circle here, and now we start to get those pieces being cut out. Same thing again down here, but with more sections. And then I did a bottom to remove the bottom one and just deal with these three. And by cutting out those, we now have our tabbed interface. Now to do the inner, it's the same as we did above, the edge detect, and then using that as a mask. And then this guy I don't think I used, but this is a neat mask if you wanted to have just the ring, these little edges instead of the center part. But here, pump that into a color, blend it together, and then you also have the color. You could do a color to mask and use that as well. Okay, so here's this inner gear thing. So we're going to talk about this guy now, okay? So this is, again, I made a ring, a different ring from before. And then these are splatter circulars using the lines. The one is sort of a clockwise and the other is a counterclockwise and a bit smaller. And so by blending these together, I'm going to do a subtractive nature to cut out from the edge to about 25% of the way through. And then this one, the same thing from the edge inward, and I leave that, well, maybe a third. And then this is a third, and we keep that middle third. So you see that's what we have there. Very good. Now to use the inner cutouts, what I've done is an edge detect. On this, yielded a really interesting result. Doing the edge width and roundness, I got these sort of circular, this what made it really think of a gear. I got these circular edged cutouts, and I said, ooh, that's perfect. So we'll use that, make some masks, and then I got down to this, and then I said, okay, but now if I blend and use an inverted circle, I can get just those cutouts, rotate them, and then I'm going to mask out of the original shape with just those. Very cool. Now here's a variant is the inner ring also cut out. So again, doing the edge detect, getting this guy, masking out the inner circle. I then get my inner ring, which I can colorize. I use the color to mask and then use that to cut out from the middle, and this creates a really cool effect. This inner channel being grooved out, combining with these, you get a really nice effect. And what I did was, for the example here, I took one of these inner power rings and just made a thicker version and put it right in the middle, and it just looks awesome. Okay, so that's those. So we got a couple more here. This is an angular piece, so this would be this piece up here. For like a header, and then you put some text here, or a footer to an email or something, or electronic message of some sort. And this is really just using boxes at angles to cut out shapes. So we're going to take our shape here, and then rotate, scale it down, and then subtract the two. And then I'm going to move it over, and I'm going to move this one over this way, blend those together to make it longer. I'm going to do another one. I'm not taking from here because I do need it to be, the movement was odd by trying to go right from here. But then we're going to subtract on this side, so now we got our parallelogram, excuse me. And then blending together a copy of this guy that has been shrunken and moved up, so we get that effect. And then up here doing some additional cutouts. So what I did was I took this shape and then I blended itself across, so I get this kind of gold bullion from the side looking effect. Scale that guy down and then cut him out of the bottom here. And once you have these couple base shapes, then you can make almost any combination of these things just using clever blending. So there we go, and then inclusion in the grid, there he is. All right, just a few more. So this is our targeting section. So in here, we got a couple targets. And I only did a few. There's one in the middle here, and then these two variants. You could do all kinds of stuff with this, but I wanted to show you the basic idea. So using the Polygon 1, setting it to 3 sides, you already get a pretty neat looking thing all by itself. But then by putting the sides at the same and a little bit smaller, and then using that as a subtractive mask, you get this really neat looking reticle. A couple variants here. I just put a smaller version of it in upside down in the middle and blended those together, and that looks pretty neat. Or you can put just a smaller version of it just directly in the middle. There you go. That's pretty cool too. And then to get the 3 triangles, I used a splatter circular, splattering from this polygon here, and then a little bit of rotate to get it kind of flat on the top and get it more centered. And then this is for inclusion into the graph. So those are all the shapes that we have, and I hope you guys have really enjoyed. It was a really fun challenge, and I really enjoyed it very much. I don't know, do I have the example up now? But I will include in the video, right about here, I will include a little section to show you. So this is what it looks like inside of Maya. I just created some planes and just applied these to the planes, and that's what we use for the thumbnail image. And I really hope that you guys have enjoyed it. So that's all we have for this week, and I hope you guys have really enjoyed. If you have any comments, questions, anything like that, if you have a challenge, send it in. I'll take a look and see what we can do. And as always, guys, keep practicing, get better, and I will see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.